This is Rick Rule for Rule Investment Media and the Rule Classroom, sponsors of the 2025 Rule Natural Resources Investment Symposium, held July 7 through 11 in Boca Raton, Florida, or via live stream in the comfort and convenience of your own home or office. Whether or not you attend live or live stream, there's a few things you need to know about the conference. The first is that we'll give you over 50 hours of intense programming over 4 days. You will need more. To that end, we have recorded the entire conference, and you will have access, whether you attended live or live stream, to all of the conference for the rest of the year. And you'll need that, by the way. We're going to give you a lot of information. Also, to that end, we interview every single exhibitor and every single speaker before the conference, so that you can prepare yourself to get the most out of the conference, allocating your time and, more importantly, your resources efficiently. We urge you to reach out and contact exhibitors before the conference if the pre-conference interview has interested you. A couple more things you need to know. First, this conference is meant to be enjoyed in conjunction with the Rule Classroom. There are hundreds of hours of instructional programming there for free, the best possible price. Note that at our conference, every single public company exhibitor has been vetted. At every other investment conference in the world that I know of, the qualification to be an exhibitor is merely a booth check that cashes. At our conference, you have to be owned, and accounts owned and managed by myself. And that allows me to make you one final outstanding offer. If for any reason you don't believe, whether you attended live or live stream, that you got your money's worth out of the conference, simply email me. There's a solid gold money back guarantee. Satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. So let's get started with this process. In the pre-conference interview series, today I have the good fortune to interview a new friend, but a friend indeed, Mr. Jason Jessup, CEO of Magna Mining. Note that like all the other exhibitors here, I'm a shareholder of Magna Mining, so that's the disclosure of conflict of interest. Jason, thank you for years of effort on behalf of natural resource investors, myself included. Thank you, too, for your support of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium.
Well, and thanks, Rick, for making the time again to talk to me and introduce me to some of your investors. It's fantastic to be here, and thank you for all the great work you do in educating investors about how to properly evaluate junior mining.
Well, certainly it's a mission for me, as you know. So, Jason, tell me something about Jason Jessup. Tell me something about your history. What qualifies you to be CEO of Magna, and why should we care what you have to say? Tell us who you are and what you've done.
Sure, that's a big question, and I'll try to keep it brief. I could talk all day about this. I've been working in the mining industry for 27 years, and about 25 years of that I've been in one jurisdiction, and that is Sudbury, Ontario, Canada. Worked with Inco here. I'm one of the major producers back in the earlier part of my career. And then I spent a great 6 years with a company called FNX Mining, a junior who had acquired some non-core assets from Inco and was extremely successful with that company. Great experience, really inspired me of what a junior company can do here in Sudbury. So in 2016, after FNX had been acquired, and then subsequently that company had been acquired by a larger company, I founded Magna to really recreate that entrepreneurial spirit. So, my background largely in operations, but I spent time in corporate development, and I think that, I do own this position. I started the company. I have a large position in the company. So I have a lot of skin in the game, probably overweighted by any standard, but that's what keeps me so motivated. So I think any investor can be rest assured that, I'm thinking about this company 24/7, and, if there's anything going on, I'm the one that's up at night thinking about it.
Jason, as I understand it, you spent most of your career in Sudbury. And am I correct that you started in operations? You were an engineer? And in fact, an engineer on some of the assets that you control today. Is all of that correct?
Well, close. So I actually was working in operations supervising. So not necessarily in the engineering office here in Sudbury, but I started off underground and supervising the operations and worked my way up from there. on the operation side of it. So earlier, prior to Sudbury, I had that engineering office experience, but I've been, sort of hands-on for a large part of my career, at least the sort of earlier part of my career in Sudbury.
So tell us in a broad sense about the mission of Magna. What is it that you're trying to do? What sets you apart from the other 3,000 junior mining companies that are public around the world?
Well, I would say focus. Focus is one thing. So, over the last 9 years, there's been lots of changes in commodity prices and what's been in favor. And you see often junior companies that sort of change direction and bounce around from one commodity to another, and sometimes even from one industry to another. We've never been trying to sell a story. We've always been working on a business plan, and our business plan has been based around buying non-core assets in Sudbury that can leverage the experience of myself and our team. I think that's what makes us really unique is we are creating a business plan to become a real mining company.
Jason, we'll have listeners in 30 countries, some of whom don't know the significance of Sudbury. Could you talk about the mineral endowment and the mining history of Sudbury and why that's so important to you?
Sudbury has been a mining camp for approximately 140 years. And throughout that time was really dominated by two major mining companies, one of them being Inco, the other Falconbridge. Now, with all that history of mining and primarily originally for nickel, but over the last 30, 40 years, a lot more copper has been discovered and mined, and well, I think that will continue to be a trend. In 2005 and 6, Inco and Falconbridge were acquired by Vale and Glencore, by Vale and Xstrata, and later Xstrata was acquired by Glencore. So now Vale and Glencore are the two major mining companies here. They have the only two nickel smelters that are in operation in North America, are right here in Sudbury, as well as two very large, underutilized processing plants, mills, and concentrators. So all this infrastructure creates a great environment for a junior company to come in and not need to build all that infrastructure for ourselves. We can simply operate the mine that we have right now, ramp that up, reopen existing mines that we have that are permitted and on care and maintenance. And that expansion can be done very capital efficiently. So Sudbury is a great place for mining. I believe it will be mining here for many, many decades to come, and I wouldn't be surprised to see for another 50 or 100 years. So it is really mineral endowment, but it's also the support of the local community that makes it such a great place to operate mines.
If you could take us briefly through the assets of Magna. What is Magna today?
So this has changed quite dramatically over the last 5 weeks. So February 28th, we made a significant acquisition of 8 properties, including the producing McCreary West copper mine, and 2 other mines that are on care and maintenance that were past producers, and 5 exploration assets, as one of them again being a former past producer with historic resources. Now we also have our Crean Hill mine, which is another past producing Inco mine that we acquired in 2022 that's permitted. We've taken a surface bulk sample in 2024 on that project and completed a PEA. And then we have our Shakespeare project, which was the first project that we acquired back in 2017, which is a past producing open pit that also has all the permits in place for the construction of a 4,500 ton per day open mine mill and tailing storage facility. So it is a large portfolio, but really anchored around our producing McCreary West copper mine.
Tell us about McCreary West then, and maybe take us through the properties in sequence so that we know you're not going to drown on opportunity.
Yeah, so we get asked quite often, what is your focus for this year? Because we do have a lot of opportunity, and as any company, we have a limited amount of resources, whether human resources or capital. So our focus is on McCreary West mine. McCreary West is a great mine. It operated by Inco from about 1974 till about 1997. Went on care and maintenance at that time, was acquired as part of this acquisition of 5 past producing mines by FNX, reopened in 2003. And it's been running since 2003 by FNX and then KGHM and now us. So another 22 years of production. Has produced about 22 million tons of ore. over that period of time. So a very significant producer. We put out a resource last fall on the project prior to closing it, but it demonstrated 9.3 million tons in a mineral resource estimate at NA 43-101. So still a significant resource left at the mine. In the last few years, been producing around 300,000 tons of ore a year that's being sold to Vale's mill or Glencore's mill. And yeah, we believe that based on our experience, and I was managing the operations at this mine from 2006 to 2008. While I was with FNX, and at that time we were producing up to 720,000 tons of ore a year. So there's definitely capacity to increase production, and with a focus on grade, I think increase grades as well, and we'll really be able to give more guidance on that towards the end of Q2.
In 2025 and then 2026, do you anticipate the mine being cash flow positive, or do you anticipate that the capital costs will suck up the cash this year?
Yeah, so this year, our focus will be on setting ourselves up for 2026 and beyond. That will require some additional capital investment. Being a non-core operating asset that was previously operated by KGHM, it was undercapitalized. So we are going to be investing capital to increase production, set ourselves up to have an inventory of development and drilling ahead of ourselves, giving us consistent, flexible operations. So that means that we do not expect to be, cash flow positives here. We'll be investing more than we will be making, is our expectation, until sometime in probably Q4. But that will allow us to have a very strong 2026. So while we're doing that and investing in development and growing the operations, what we think is the optimal level for this type of deposit, we will also be building our restart plan for our next mine that we believe we can bring into production, and that's the LVAC mine, which is right next door. And I also had the pleasure and the honor of managing that operation with FNX in 2009 to 2011. Spectacular mine. We're really excited about it. We came out with some recent high-grade copper drill results, and we think that by sometime towards end of Q3, we will have some guidance on what that restart plan is going to look like, and hopefully be able to execute that early in 2026.
Maybe you could share a little bit about those results, with the caveat to our listeners that the average mined grade of copper worldwide is about 0.5%.
Yes. And a little bit more background on LVAC mine. FNX discovered a footwall deposit called the LVAC footwall, later named the Morrison deposit. And I brought that along with our team. I led that team to bring that deposit into commercial production in 2010. And we were operating that mine at a monthly head grade being shipped to the mill of about 10% copper and 10 grams of precious metals, with a byproduct of nickel anywhere from 1 to 1.5%, which there's a lot of mines would love to have 1.5% nickel as a primary metal. That was just a byproduct we had. So there is very high grade copper there. Now this Morrison deposit is just on one small part of the prospective package. So where we are drilling right now, we intersected, and we announced just last week, an intersection of 24.9% copper with 5 grams of precious metals over 1.6 meters. So typically these are narrow veins, ranging anywhere from less than a meter to up to 7 or 8 meters. But this demonstrates the high grade nature of almost pure chalcopyrite with a little bit of nickel and some precious metals mixed into that. So we're quite excited to incorporate this, and this is close to surface in relative proximity to existing infrastructure. So the mine is on care and maintenance. It's a dry mine. I was underground there 2 weeks ago. It's a mine we believe we can restart for a low capital cost. And as soon as we start getting into ore, we can ship that to the mill. So it's not like in some restart scenarios where until you build the mill, all your ore is stockpiled and you'll process it once the mill's commissioned. We can start shipping from immediately as soon as we start producing and start generating revenues as we're restarting and ramping up production.
Jason, one of the important parts of the story to me is a hugely supportive shareholder. If you could tell us something about the relationship with Dundee and the fact that, at least in my opinion, that relationship brings more than money.
Absolutely. And, I can't say enough good things about Dundee Corp, led by Jonathan Goodman. And they have been extremely supportive shareholders of ours since our RTO back in 2021. Jonathan sits on our board. I asked him to join our board in 2022, and he graciously accepted. And they've been supportive in every round of financing, including this last financing we closed at the beginning of March. We raised $33.5 million, and they were extremely supportive in that as well. They currently own approximately 21% of our outstanding shares. So great supportive shareholder, and it's really important. And I think, for all of your listeners to understand when they're looking at companies, having a cornerstone supportive shareholder makes such a difference in the success of any company. It allows us access to capital. They've done a lot of due diligence and have a great reputation. And with that, I think it brings the support and the trust of other investors to come alongside, which opens up access to capital. And as everyone understands in junior mining, access to capital is critically important. So yeah, Dundee has done a lot for us, and we can't be more appreciative of them.
Jason, your story has a lot of attraction. A great legacy mining district, one of the great mining districts in the world, an inventory of at least 5 past producers, access to production infrastructure, so you don't need to reinvent the wheel, and a supportive shareholder. To the extent that our attendees want to learn more about Magna, who in particular do they reach out to, and how exactly do they reach out to that person?
So I would appreciate if any of our retail investors or potential investors want more information, reach out directly to me. There's nothing really more important for me than being able to speak to our investors who really are our owners. And so yeah, they can call me. My number is on a lot of our presentations. You can find it on our website, but it's also, I can give it to you right now. It's 705-665-0262. Leave me a message if I don't answer because I'm in meetings a lot, but I will get back to anyone who calls me. And if you want to send me an email, if that's easier and you have questions, it's jason.jessup@magnamining.com. So pretty simple. And again, you can find that on our website. So please reach out to me. I always say, we have the best investors, and I think we do that because we create relationships with them. So all of our retail investors are important investors to us.
So ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. The buck stops with the boss. Reach out and call him. Jason, thank you for decades of efforts on behalf of mining investors, including myself. I was an FNX investor. Thank you, too, for your ongoing efforts at Magna. And finally, in particular, thank you for your support of the Natural Resources Investment Symposium in Boca. I look forward to hosting you there.
Well, thank you, Rick, and I'm looking forward to seeing you there.